Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Entertainment Evolved. This is going to be an Evolved review. I have with me a very special guest returning to the podcast today. Welcome back, Stanos, Douglas. What's going on?
What's going on, my friend? How's everything going with you?
Hey, man, it is going. We're rolling right along here with our Last of Us coverage. I do want to add, just to everybody, who's watching this today. Normally, I would have an item on the table back here behind me, but actually, another show that we're going to be covering is starting today, this week, and so we're actually going to be covering The Mandalorian season 3 when it comes out, and I'm going to be doing a review of that in the studio later on this week. So we will have an item from the shelves behind me to show off. I actually added a few over the weekend. Funko is very happy with me. They continuously drain the money from my pocket. So yeah, we're going to be doing double duty here on an Evolved review for the next couple weeks. Thanks HBO and Disney for that overlap.
These are good problems to have. These are both amazing shows. So
Hey man, that's true. That's true. I'm having a blast watching them. We're gonna have a blast reviewing them. So you were last on for, was it episode 4 that we did?
did we review 3 or 4? I'm trying to remember. I feel like we reviewed 3.
Yeah, I mean it was 3 actually. Yeah, it was 3.
hmm
How can we forget that? So how you enjoying the show since then, man?
I've enjoyed it, man. In terms of the emotional response, it wasn't quite the same the last few episodes as it was from 3. A little bit more action, so I'm happy about that as well. I kind of agree with some of the takes of the other guests that you had on about episode I think it was episode 4. Kind of seeming like it kind of dragged it out a little bit in terms of it could have been one episode from episode 4 and 5. I would have to agree with that as well. I'm not mad at it. I mean, you're not always going to have perfect episodes, so I'm fine with it. But it just didn't have that same impact. And then the episode 6, it kind of wrapped things back up from that standpoint of pulling on the heartstrings.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think 4 is by far the weakest episode, but it wasn't bad. I
Right.
didn't love it the way that I love all the other episodes. And I'll say this: if episode 4, at the end of this season, if that's the weakest episode, then this is a masterpiece season of television because
Absolutely.
it wasn't like it was bad. It just wasn't up to the same par as all the rest of this amazing series.
It's almost like kind of like the situation MCU has going on right now, where you come off of a end game, and then it's like, all right, what are you doing after this? And it's gonna be very hard to measure up, So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because like Ant Man is kind of getting dragged all over the internet, and I think it's the best Ant Man movie. I didn't love it, you know what I mean? But I actually went on Superhero Homies and did a review on that with them. So anybody that wants to hear our thoughts on that, check that out. But I gave it like a 7 out of 10. I,
Yeah, I
I
same.
I thought it was better than the first two Ant Man movies. The problem
Agreed.
is the bar is just so high now, and they said it
And
there.
and unfortunately for MCU, is the bar is kind of dropping. If we being honest.
Oh yeah, man.
Um,
I think DC is gonna come after them if they don't get it together.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point now where the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 doesn't do it. I'm kind of done with the day one releases for MCU in terms of me going. I almost every single MCU movie that's come out, I always go on day one, so on Thursdays. And the last few times, I'm like, I could have waited to watch this.
Yeah,
So
I think that Guardians. Here's my prediction for Guardians 3. I think Guardians 3 is going to be a stellar movie. I think it's going to be probably a 9 out of 10, right? But I
mhm.
but I don't think it's going to do anything for the MCU at large. I
No, I
think
don't think
that
so either.
yeah, I think James Gunn wants to very neatly kind of wrap their story up, the Guardians, and then he's gone. So it's like even if it's a stellar movie, it's like okay, you proved that you're one person you've got that can still knock it out of the park. Just went to go work for the competition, and he's in
Yeah,
charge.
It says a lot about what's going on between the Marvel and DC, the DC entertainment universe. So we will see, man.
Well, let's talk about a property that's doing well. Let's get back on let's get back on Last of Us, man. So I never played the Left Behind DLC. So this was all like new for me. I mean, I know that Riley's not going to make it, right? Clearly, but the way that this show did things, I want to jump right into this. The fact that this is like considered a zombie show, but we have so few. There's so few zombies in it.
Hmm.
The whole episode, I was sitting there wondering. I was like, how are they going to handle the scene where this like zombie comes out? Because we know there's a cordyceps zombie in there. We know that they're going to get attacked, and at least one of them is going to get bitten. You probably knew both of them were going to get bitten. Uh, so we've got that set up, and I'm like, how are they going to handle this? And I thought it was done very well. It was not the typical kind of Walking Dead thing where there's just something going on, all of a sudden there's a zombie, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's been done to death. And I think the fact that they're so like just careful in their use of the zombies in the show, and they keep it so minimal that when they do use them, they're used to great effect, and it always works. They always pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they actually panned to where the zombie or the infected was at, it was kind of a chilling reveal just because of the way that he was attached to the wall, and you see all the vines and everything going across the wall. So just like, all right, this guy's been here for a while, and he's woken up because nobody's been coming in this mall, and it's time to look for who was making the noise.
Yeah, I thought that was a great reveal and kind of like a good way to keep you on your toes like the whole rest of the time because we're so used to all these other, zombie type shows. So it's like the whole rest of the time they're in the mall enjoying it, you're constantly on the lookout for when is this thing going to show up? When is it going to pop out? And I thought that the way that they played it all the way through to the end was really smart. Um, I've kind of said this week after week, but like there's got to be nobody left on that train that's hating on Bella Ramsey at this point, right?
So I'm going to say something about that. I remember we had a conversation previously about Bella Ramsey as Ellie and how people kind of didn't really get the feel of Ellie from her. And I could kind of understand what they were saying. I thought she was doing a great job. This is the first episode where I actually felt like I was watching Ellie
Yeah.
and not watching Bella, which is not a bad thing for Bella Park because she's amazing and she's been doing a great portrayal of Ellie. But I actually felt like I was watching Ellie in live action on this episode. And I mean, that instantly stood out to me, and it made me fall in love with this episode instantly.
I will say that like if I had not been familiar with her work previous to this, then I may have felt differently about her portrayal. But like I had stronger feelings about Bella Ramsey than I did about Ellie, you know, coming into this. But I will
Mm-hmm.
say that like in the last episode when her and Joel have the fight, and she drops that crucial like "I'm not her" line. That to me was like the point where I was like, she's absolutely just nailing this. But then this week, I think, she's a star of the show this week, and I just think that she knocked it out of the park. What's the other actress? Stormy
Storm
Reed.
Reed.
Storm Reed is Storm Reed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen her in a couple other things, but usually she's in more like minor roles. And I've always loved her too. So when I saw that she was playing Riley, I was like, she's also going to knock it out of the park.
And she absolutely did. Oh my gosh, these two on camera together, the whole episode, it stole the show, man. It really did. Like
Yeah,
I was actually not even, pressed about them panning back to Joel, even though obviously they were going to do that because they kind of had to, still show what was currently going on in the world based off of the events of last episode. But the episode was so good that you didn't really, you kind of almost forget about it a little bit. It's like that same effect episode 3 have. When you first get into it, you're like, all right, how long is this flashback going to last? But then you realize like this is a story in itself, and this very well so much of a story that it was actually a DLC in the game. I didn't know they were going to do this. I don't know why. I've kind of seen the look ahead for the season, and I must have missed something, but I didn't know that they were going to do this.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I knew the DLC existed. I never played it, so I didn't really know. I knew it was Ellie centric, but I didn't really know that this was the story that it contained. Um, I think that this is another instance of this like story was always going to be better in this format, in this long form like premium television format. I think that this story, like, I don't know, like I said, I haven't played the DLC, but I know that if I was just running around in the game, kind of doing this stuff with the two of them, that probably would have bored me in a video game. I would not have been entertained. I actually typically really hate that kind of stuff. There's a section in God of War in the second one, or the most recent one rather, because it's technically like 5 or 6.
Right.
But in Ragnarok, where you're kind of running around as Atreus, spoilers, and like that whole segment, you're kind of just running around and having the story told to you for the most part. And I hated that section of that game. And I feel like this DLC would have been the same for me, but seeing these two actors on screen playing it out and really just getting all those like emotions from each one of them, just these little intricate details of their character, I loved it. I was glued to the screen the whole time.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you made a really good comparison to the God of War because it was pretty similar to that as far as the DLC, the standalone DLC for Left Behind, which I also really enjoyed the fact that they named the episode Left Behind. It was kind of like an aha moment. I was like, oh, that's what they're doing. Okay, I'm not really paying attention to the episode names as much as the actual show and the scene. So, yeah, that made me really happy. So there's a few things in this episode at the very beginning that caught my eye, and this is what made me kind of, you know what, I'm gonna take some notes on this episode because they seem to be putting a lot of care in this. When we did episode 3 review, we talked about when they went into the store and they they had like the old arcade machine, and I want to say the arcade machine in that episode was Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah, it's the same one. I noticed it in this episode as well. Like I was like, oh, it's the same game.
Right. So here's the thing that I didn't notice on that episode, and it happened so fast. I wasn't realizing that she was referencing this scene in this episode. In that when she was like her friend knows so much about the game, and detailing the fatality because it's her first time seeing the fatality. So her telling Joel all of this, she's really recapping what we watched this week. So the fact that they tied those two things together, I mean, it's a small detail, but I really appreciated that.
So on that note, another small detail that they threw in there, and this one is much more heartbreaking. So at the end of this episode, and we're skipping around a little bit, so bear with us. Uh, at the end of this episode, we get this scene where Ellie and Riley are just sitting there, and they're like, "We're gonna wait to turn," and that's it. And it goes black, and we never get back to them. They decide that they're just gonna both turn together, and whatever happens happens, which is a pretty fucking wild thing to decide. I probably would have gone with the bullet myself. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
but they never go back to it. And I thought that that was brilliant because we know that Ellie is not going to turn. And so in episode 4, when she shoots the guy, right? When the guy is like on top of Joel and she shoots him in the back. And in the aftermath of that, she says, "It's not my first time." Meaning that Riley was the first time she had to shoot someone. And that was just such a, like, that realization, and it is just heart wrenching. And they didn't have to show it to us for us to know that that's what happened. And I thought that that was a brilliant decision by the show.
I agree. And before, I know we're going to kind of start from the beginning of the events of the episode, but one thing in terms of that scene where she finds out. We'll get to that a little bit later, but um, leading up to this, you kind of still see the innocence in Ellie, and you don't really get to see the Ellie we see today, where she's a little bit more hardened and a little bit more not so sensitive to what's going on in the events of the world, because she's seen a little bit up to this point. But at that point of the show, the beginning of the episode, and for the most part throughout the episode, she seems like a young girl. Like, she's just happy and, kind of naive a little bit. Um, so I definitely appreciated the fact. And Bella, I mean, she's freaking killing it because she's been playing this role in the show as Ellie, as current day Ellie. For her to switch how she's portraying Ellie in this episode, I mean, it just speaks to how amazing of an actress she is.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I really liked seeing her at this stage. Like we get all these details, like, oh, she's in a Fedra school, so like she's trying to ultimately like get a job with Fedra. They're trying to make her an officer because they realize the potential in her and that she's very smart. And just kind of seeing her, she's not 100% bought into the Fedra stuff, right? But there was a couple of moments where, Riley was talking about the Fireflies and she was like, well, that's bullshit. And
Yeah,
then, they would go back and forth with that, though. Like, Ellie would say some, like, Fedra propaganda, and Riley would call her out on it. It's like, neither one of these people are, there's no saints on either side of this, right? But obviously, like, we've seen what happens. Like, sometimes Fedra is the ones holding things together. I mean, they're like, oh, we've taken out Fedra in other places, and immediately our brain goes to, yeah, Kansas City. Yeah, that worked out well for everyone there. So there was there's a lot of layers to the kind of banter back and forth between them, where they're telling us a lot about the world that we didn't get to see because we leave the QZ at the end of episode one.
yeah, man. Guys, I'm just still so going to the beginning where we're talking about the school, where she's at the Federal school. There was a scene. You start off and you seeing her. They're doing like the laps in the gym. There's a scene where the girl takes off her Walkman. I don't know why, but it triggered something in my mind of the girl who did it being Abby. I don't know why I thought this. That was the first place my mind went, and I was like, please don't let this be, because I don't know how they're gonna transition that throughout the rest of the show. Which it wasn't. The girl's name was Bethany, so thankful for that. But that scene was cool. She's basically like, Riley's not here to protect you. And she's like, I don't need her protection. Socks her right in the face, and she winds up in the office with the officer.
It was very interesting because, the last episode for six, I had Lauren on, and she has no basis on the games whatsoever. Like she does never played them, so she's going
Mm-hmm.
in completely blind on this. And I was like, I don't want to spoil anything. I was like, in my head, I'm like, there's no way they're actually going to kill Joel right here. I was like, they could. I mean, the show has shown us that they are willing to make significant departures from the game, but I don't think that they would rob themselves of the way that this is going to go at the end, which we're not going to talk
Agreed.
about now. But you know, that being said, like last episode was like the worst episode for me to have someone on who hasn't played the second game, because the last episode had so many like little tie-ins and nods to part two that we wouldn't,
Absolutely.
we don't get in the first game. Whereas this one, they really, I think, just focused in on Ellie's backstory, and I thought that was great because previously I would have said that Ellie seems a little too hardened in the early episodes of the show. It's like, I think I mentioned this on one of the previous reviews, where like when she shoots the guy, her reaction seems a lot more like the Ellie we would get at the end of season one, and not the Ellie at this point in time. But this
Mm-hmm.
episode, I think, really fills that in and like shows you like why she was not phased by killing the guy. Because like if you've had to shoot your best friend in the world, then killing a stranger probably is not going to be that big of a deal to you.
Yeah. I agree, man. And once we get to that part, we'll talk a little bit more about that. What happens towards the end of the episode, but um, yeah, man. I Ellie, she like I said, she's just showcasing her being a young girl. As even with the fighting, like how she reacted to the girl taking off the Walkman and approaching her. She just a little bit more emotional, a little bit more erratic in her behavior. She's like I said, she's selling it as the I don't know how old she's supposed to be at that point in time, but whatever it is, I mean, she's definitely selling it. Now she still seems young in current day, but you could tell she's been through a little bit, so she seems a little bit older, maybe like high school. Versus in there, it's probably like early middle school. That's what it seemed like. Maybe, yeah, I'll probably say early middle school, not so much late elementary. Probably like sixth, seventh grade, something like that.
I mean, not to mention too, a Walkman's got to be worth a lot in this world. You can't just go to Radio Shack and get another one.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't do that in our world either, but for different reasons. Because the Walkman, was replaced by the smartphone, and so was Radio Shack, kind of. But
right.
in their world, Walkman's got to be worth a lot. I mean, this is like Star Lord's Walkman. He can't just go get another one. This is like, so somebody snatching those headphones off and risking breaking your Walkman is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing too is like she's got to have like whatever tapes or whatever that she can get. So that kind of explains too like some of her like kind of broad like music knowledge that she's got in the other episodes as well because she's always got that Walkman on.
And that so there was another little small I guess Easter egg that they put in the show. So they get in when they get this is like when they first get to the mall. She turns on the lights and the take on me song starts playing.
Yeah,
um when she initially broke, so when they introduced Riley into the episode, she breaks into the room. This is shortly after Ellie is escorted to the office for hitting the girl in the gym. um Riley breaks in the room, acting like she's attacking her. So when and this is kind of leading up to their relationship throughout the episode, how it progressively builds. But in the beginning, she's like, "Oh, I need to change. Can you turn around?" So she turns around and she's looking down, and you actually see the tape on the table. So I thought that was cool that they had the tape on the table, and then they actually played the song when they got in the mall.
the detail and the set design on this show is unrivaled, man. I really
Man,
think they do such a good job with like all these little tie-ins, all these little Easter eggs they put in. Riley breaking into the room, man, that's a hell of a prank to pull on someone, especially if they think you're dead.
yeah, you think they're dead, and then I mean, just look at the times that they're in. I mean, that's not a chance you could take that somebody is breaking in and they're trying to kill you. So yeah, you're gonna grab your knife or your gun or whatever else you can to protect yourself, especially at nighttime, man. Especially nighttime, and given the events that happened earlier that day, she already on edge. Yeah, it's a lot going on.
Yeah, not to mention, you joined the Fireflies. If they catch you, they're gonna kill you after you get tortured for info. Not gonna be a great time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I also would not have gone. I mean, because I'm not a child, but I also wouldn't have gone jumping across the rooftops in this day and age either. Because if you like fall and break your leg, it's not like there's just a hospital nearby with like morphine and like the tools to reset that. I mean, Fedra's got a hospital here, I'm sure, but yeah, you're not gonna want to go through any of that.
But that kind of and the cool thing about that is, and that's why I just really appreciate how they were portraying her as being like this very much younger version of herself. Younger kids are brave, man. They're not afraid to
Oh
get
yeah,
hurt. They jump off stuff all the time, and sometimes they do get hurt. But in their heads, they're like, "I'm unbreakable. I am indestructible. I'm gonna jump from this couch to this couch. I'm gonna jump off this counter." So they're doing that, and they're just living in bliss with each other. They're happy to be reunited, and just fearless.
so I want to talk about when they get to the mall and the dude falls through the floor. That was hilarious. Like the way that they animated that, like where he just falls through, like it was just the funniest thing. The way that they did it, like I busted out laughing as soon as he fell through the floor. They did a really good job with the visual effect on that.
Agreed, agreed. And I wasn't actually sure how like what to expect from that part, but after you fell, it's kind of over. And even then, they're looking at it the same way, like oh my goodness, like I can't believe that just happened.
Although the first thing I thought, like they found out like he was mixing the pills and alcohol or whatever, and that's probably what got him. Is like, they started like drinking out of the bottle. I'm like, what if he dissolved the pills in the bottle? you know,
I didn't
that
think about that. I
that
didn't think
they
about
did.
that.
They didn't either. They didn't give a shit. They were like,
Yeah, no,
okay,
they were
here we go.
they definitely they were living on the wild side this episode. So yeah, that's just another moment. Well, the other thing I was thinking of, so until they revealed that there was pills on the ground, they showed the bottle and they showed him like leaning up against the wall dead, and there was like some type of substance around his mouth. Um, I was actually thinking that maybe he had gotten infected, and I was concerned of them drinking out of the bottle for that reason. That obviously this stuff travels, and I mean I don't know if it's able to live in alcohol or not. So at least on the surface of the bottle. So that's what I was kind of worried about. But then once I seen the pills, I was like, okay, so he probably threw up or whatever the case, and that's what was on his mouth. And they didn't care one way or another.
Yeah, I thought he might have been infected too, but yeah, I mean, it was just that he had like overdosed or whatever, and threw up and like died and just been sitting in there.
Yeah,
So yeah, that scene was hilarious. I really love this scene where she has Ellie go into the mall and like cuts on the lights and everything, and it's just this old abandoned mall, but like Bella's acting skills come in here, and she's just over the moon at this at the site of this mall and all this different stuff because she's probably never seen any of this stuff.
mm-mm. Never seen any of that stuff. So you have just the fact that it's a mall in itself is like this is a mall, and for what we could tell, a rather functioning mall. The apocalypse hadn't gotten too much to it yet. You had the looters and stuff, but she's seeing all the lights and how colorful everything is, and just the grand scope of it. It doesn't look like that on the outside. So you seeing this, and this is like a remnant of the old world, almost kind of like she can almost put herself in that situation. Like I could see why you guys enjoyed this back in the day. This is amazing. Like look at it.
The stairs move, like her fascination with the escalator. It's like she's doing all the stuff that like you wanted to do as a kid the first time you saw an escalator, but like weren't allowed to, and yeah, I loved it. I thought that was just perfect because it was like this is exactly how a kid wants to react when they see an escalator for the first time. But for most of us, that was in public at a mall that was open.
Yeah, yeah. And then so that actually leads into the next scene, where it's this tug of war that they're playing with each other of kind of feeling each other, or even though they're friends. You had the scene where she asked her to turn around with the clothes. Now you have this scene where they're walking from the escalator, and one of the first stores they see is the Victoria's Secret, and Riley makes a comment about like she starts laughing like what is going on, like oh I'm imagining you wearing this, and this is not something you would normally say to a friend. So
Right.
you like to say you can kind of start to see the pulling back and forth of I'm gonna throw a little bait out there to see how you react to this, and basically they have these feelings for each other, but they don't necessarily know how to express them to each other. So they're kind of doing little small things here and there.
Yeah, I really can't wait, and I'm sure this is already probably out on the internet. I've just thankfully been busy and not had to see it. I'm sure that there are people out there calling this show woke again and whatnot. And I'm just like, yeah, Ellie's a lesbian. That's kind of the whole like that's been part of the character from Jump. So, if you're mad now, just wait until season two.
And I mean, again, this is all in the game. So it's not
Right.
like they're just doing it for TV, like trying to push an agenda or anything. This is literally from what the game is. These are the characters. So, I mean, got to get that stuff out of your head, man. I mean, it's amazing. Just enjoy it for the amazing acting that they're doing.
And I'm going to tell you, anybody who got pissed off about that, they probably stopped watching episode 3 anyway. So you
Yeah.
know, good riddance. Clearly, the show does not need you. It's doing very well. So,
Right. Right. I
and,
agree. I
and
agree. I
those
mean,
viewer numbers, man,
just
they're astonishing every week.
they really are, man. And so let's see what we have. Victoria's Secret. Oh, the other thing. There was a small scene. Might have been right before that or right after that. They were around that vicinity. I think it was like a Foot Locker or something. And she was explaining. Riley's explaining to Ellie. Um, at the time when it was announced what was going on, people were breaking in stores and looting and taking things that they need and want. And in her head, she's like, why would they want any of this stuff? Because it's not helpful for what they're going through now. Like, what you gonna do with some Jordans, or what you gonna do with a headband, But in our world, in Riley's previous world, these are things that matter to people. I mean, you have people lining up for shoes every week, and so her kind of explaining that, I do like how they kind of go back to explaining to Ellie, who really just grown up in this, to understand how the world was before that.
Yeah, I really like that discussion as well. And they kind of talked about like, oh, some of these stores, they weren't completely cleared out, but like people just looted the things they really wanted first, and then it
Exactly.
kind of just went from there. So,
Yeah, because there was like a soap store, and she's like, okay, so the soap, I mean, there's a bunch of soap in here, but y'all took shoes and socks
yeah,
and what I'm saying, head, basketballs and stuff. So it's like, but yeah.
soap being the commodity there, probably. A hot shower doesn't seem like it's something that's very common.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if somebody was to loot today, it's not many people probably breaking in soap stores out of all the stores that's inside of a mall.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And going back to like their relationship too, like Riley clearly not only took a huge risk to have this night with Ellie, but like the amount of depth that she went into to planning all of this, it's just like that's also not something you would typically do for a friend. Not saying it's impossible, but
Mm-hmm.
like I'm going to tell you right now, I never went through even half the amount of trouble that she was going through to plan a night for a friend. I just haven't done it. Like it's just, it was very intricate with a lot of like different things that she knew were like catered specifically to stuff that Ellie was going to love.
And then if you even think about the fact that, first of all, they're in a mall during this, so you know you don't know how many infected is in the mall. She had to go by herself to set all of this up. So, I mean, that just took a lot of guts in itself to do that. So you already take the amount of time and effort to set up these things that is going to impress Ellie, but you did this all on your own as well. I mean, it's definitely something to be commended, and it just shows how much he actually cares about Ellie.
I will say though, whoever's running the power grid, they had to have noticed like a big spike when she turns the damn mall on. I was just like, yeah, somebody's gonna show up eventually, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I was wondering that too, because Riley did make a mention about, oh, they won't be, because Ellie was like, wait, what about the lights? And like, oh, they won't be able to see it from the outside, from the rooftops or whatever they have, whatever covering on them. But yeah, to your point, I mean, if you're managing that, you're gonna notice that. I mean, that's a lot of energy that's being generated in that mall.
Yeah, I agree entirely. Yeah, it's it's a lot. It is definitely drawing on the power grid. So somebody definitely saw something going around. But
Yeah,
whoever they got monitoring that, it's probably like it's a federal employee that is used to just sitting there watching a bunch of dials and stuff move. So
yeah.
you know.
So what do we got? So we had the Victoria. Okay, so I think the next part, they get to the merry-go-round.
Yep, and we have a long scene kind of on the merry-go-round, and she's absolutely fascinated by it. It kind of breaks down when they're trying to use it or whatever. But when she's even trying to pull Ellie to like the next thing, she's like, "I'm riding on a magical horse in the middle of the mall. Like, what else are we gonna do?" At this point, Ellie's not even. You could tell it's maybe bothering her a little bit, but she's not really thinking like, "Okay, this is my best friend." Like, they've joined the Fireflies. We're not going to be able to hang out anymore. Like she's just really at this point just taking it all in still.
Mm-hmm. And then from the romantic standpoint, they kind of get a moment where they can like they're kind of looking at each other a certain way, and it's just like it's almost like that moment of when you're dating someone, that moment when you're like getting close to telling them that you love them. That's kind of where they're at this point. Like that's what's in both of their heads. They don't quite know how to express it yet, but they're getting there. They're warming up to each other a little bit more. They're kind of looking at each other a little bit longer without looking away from the other person. And I don't want them to think this or whatever.
Yeah, you definitely could feel that there's like a tension there. And we kind of find out around this area, around this time in the episode too, that there are things on both of their minds that are starting to kind of wear on them. That like they're starting to realize that hey, things are about to change and not for the better. Riley's kind of holding on to the whole idea that she's going to be shipped out because now she's in the Fireflies and they're going to be shipping her off to a different post, so she's not even going to be here. Um, and she tried to see if like Ellie could join up too and go with her, but Marlene shot it down. And that reveal, Ellie just she just kind of crashes and burns at that reveal.
That was a rough moment because it's like, wait, you mean all this amazing time that we've had together? First of all, you just came back after me thinking that you were dead, for you to now tell me that you are leaving for good. So I mean, you might as well just stayed away. You might as well have stayed dead in my head, because now I've warmed back up to you, and now you're leaving again for good, and it's definitely a lot for her to take on, especially given how much of an amazing experience that they're having together in this mall, and how much their feelings are quickly ramping up, as this time is going on, because they realize how much they care about each other, especially after all that amount of time that Riley was gone.
Right. And this kind of all boils over to when Ellie finds the grenades. And at that point she's just like, I mean, you're gonna use these to kill Fedra people because like that's what I am. And it's just like, oh, well, these never get used anywhere near you, and it's like you're like a grunt in their organization. You're not gonna be able
Yeah,
to stop them if they try. I could be killed by one of these today. And she was rightfully upset.
absolutely. And she was right in what she was saying, because realistically, even if Riley was, oh well, not her, they'll kill both of you. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I mean the the Fireflies or any of these groups that like are really like rebelling against Fedra that we've seen in the show. Usually they're either just as bad or even worse, because that's just the point that the society has devolved into.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And I it's crazy because Ellie picked up on that, even though Riley is the one that actually joined them. She kind of seems a little bit more gullible to what Marlene and whoever else that she's interacting with is telling her about what the Fireflies stand on. And Ellie is kind of like, I think you're buying a little bit into what they're saying a little bit too much. I think you give them a little bit more credit than they need. Like they're just as bad as anyone else. So yeah, I mean that really comes full circle in that scene, when she tells her that she's leaving, and she's like, "Come with me," and all this stuff.
and that's the interesting comparison is it's like you have Riley who the Fedra basically told her like you're not going to be anything. We're putting you on sewage detail. That's what you're worth to us. And then it's like, okay, so obviously when she goes to Marlene and Marlene starts filling her head with like, oh, you could be this with us, and you could do that. You're gonna do all these great things. She wants to believe that, but
Right,
but with Ellie it's the opposite because like Fedra's like, oh, if you do everything correctly, we'll make you an officer. You can sleep in a warm bed. You can take a hot shower. You can live this life that is a luxury in comparison to most people in this day and age. A federal officer is going to live, other than like a firefly trying to kill you. You're pretty good in
yeah,
as far as what's possible in this day and age that they're
right,
living in. So it's very interesting to see like the way that the propaganda affects both of them differently based on their kind of like preconceived bias towards Fedra.
Yeah, yeah. Side note, in this same scene, them getting into whatever this room is, like some type of warehouse room or whatever in the mall. Um, Another cool thing that I thought, and this is kind of like a me putting on the video game hat and lens. They find the pun book, and they start kind of like reading off puns and stuff to each other. The reason I thought this was cool, one, obviously, they were going back to the pun book where Ellie and Joel were going over, I think, at the end of episode 4. Um, but then also, when you think about these types of video games, they do the whole collectibles thing. And when you find these collectibles, sometimes there'll be some dialogue around that. They'll have some type of interact, like a little quick interaction. So it kind of was like them putting that in live action of them finding a collectible. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, I really kind of got that nod, as well to just like video games in general. Like, oh hey, they found a thing that, you know, like a little trophy or something might pop up.
Exactly. And because I mean, she's going through saying that, it's these, well, now 5 wonders when she included the escalator, but these different 4 main points of the mall that she wanted to show her. That, and I don't think that this was one of them. I could be wrong though. That might have been one of them. But because another one I think we kind of missed right before this was the photo booth. And they're
Yeah,
there and they're taking the pictures together and stuff.
yeah, where like the toner had gone bad, and so you didn't really get, a lot of the photos weren't very well developed. Yeah,
Oh
we
yeah.
did skip over that. So it was the escalator was the secret fifth one because she didn't even think about her being super impressed by that. So we
Yeah.
had the merry-go-round, we had the photo booth, the like horror shop at the end. So which one am I missing?
Let's see, merry-go-round, escalator, photo booth. The one we haven't gotten to yet. Oh no, this wasn't one. I remember what the last 2 were. So this is going to get into to what we were kind of talking about the earlier part of the episode, the arcade.
Oh, right, the
Um,
arcade was the last one. Yeah, because it's the arcade, and then they go to the horror shop at the end.
that's the last
That was
one.
the last one. Yeah,
Hmm. So you get in the arcade, and this is kind of another moment of like when she first walks into the mall, she sees all these, the lights and all the stores and everything lit up. She gets in this arcade, and it's like, oh wow, like all this stuff like works. Like you got the Mortal Kombat game in here. You got I think they had like Daytona or Cruising USA or something like that. So she's like making like car racing sounds and stuff. So she's just like enamored. And Riley's like, I've already rigged this machine over here so we could actually play this stuff. Um, so that was cool because at first, obviously Ellie is trying to make it work and it's like, oh, I don't have any money. And then you see all these dollar bills laying on the ground, and it's like, oh, not that money. That's not gonna work in this machine. And then she pulls it out saying that I spent an hour when I was preparing for this, rigging this machine, which is another just went to show Ellie how much effort she put into this. The fact that she went to this mall before to even try to make sure that they had the coins in there and fix the machine to be able to grab them coins whenever they needed it. So I thought that was really cool.
yeah. I mean, seeing the arcade was awesome. It was just like, yeah, I don't know why you would ever leave here. Especially, just think about if you could go to an arcade like and you never played a video game before, like just how, incredible of an experience that would be. And it was even more too, because like, I went to arcades in like 2003, and like, yeah,
Right.
all of that shit was in there. It was like
Exactly.
this was exactly what would have been in an arcade in 2003.
Yeah, and then I mean and then even with the whole Mortal Kombat thing, they play the first match, Riley beats her, and then they kind of stay there for a while. They're like, all right, you want to enjoy it again? Yeah, and they just running up coins. She teaching her finishing moves, and she's just like blown away about this experience. She kind of telling her about the characters in the game and just the premise of the game and stuff. So Ellie just taking all this information in as well as just enjoying the moment of being there with Riley.
Yeah,
So then we get to the last wonder where you up until this point, you forget that there's a danger amiss. They're having all this fun, they're seeing all these different things, and then reality kind of sets back in that this is The Last of Us. They get to the haunted house, and this is where our friend comes out of the room where he was at,
Well,
and
they have the fight first, and Ellie leaves,
that's right, that's
and
right. Okay, so this was the moment where she actually told her that she was leaving for good.
yeah, so they have the
Okay.
fight. Ellie leaves, and then she sets off the little screaming ghost thing, and Ellie runs back in thinking that Riley's being attacked. And honestly, like I never at any point forgot about like the danger, right? Like it was in the back of my mind the whole time. So
Hmm.
like for me, like the tension was just building the whole episode because I'm thinking like, okay, this thing is gonna jump out at any point. When's it gonna happen? And then
Right.
she leaves and you start hearing the screams and you're like, oh, she's being attacked. And then she finds her in there, and of course it's a little horror shop, and they start messing around with all the little masks and things, and they're like dancing on the counter. And this is where we get the
Oh, that's right. That's
yeah,
right. Yes,
this is
I
where we
did
get the
forget
kiss
about that
too.
part.
Yeah, Ellie kisses her, and her reaction to that, like the whole way that they played that scene was incredible. I thought.
Yeah, because I mean, this is they get to the last wonder of them all, and then every wonder there was like they're getting closer and closer to kind of really showing how they felt about each other. So this moment, obviously her reaction to her telling her that she's leaving and her Ellie completely leaving them all. Like I said, I forgot briefly about that until you just brought that back up, and then her coming back and it's like, all right, even though I'm pissed off at her, hearing those screams triggered something in me that made me realize how much I actually care about Riley. So she runs back and she's ready to face whatever it is. And when she realizes that it's not screaming, they have their good time and stuff. But then the Mr. Infected finally does come out, and
Yeah,
what I think he like knocks out Riley first. Riley actually has a gun, so that's rough because you kind of need that. She starts shooting at him, and she's like hitting him in the leg and stuff. They're probably not well equipped with how to deal with these. Now they're thinking to shoot him in the head. They're just panicking and just shooting at this point just to get him down, and it's not working. He keeps getting back up and knocks her down. So then he starts attacking Ellie. Um, Ellie pulls out her knife. She's like stabbing him in the stomach, and he's not going down. No matter what they're doing, they're throwing everything at him. Um, Riley jumps back up. She intervenes again. So in the midst of this, you kind of wondering like if somebody's gonna get bit or somebody, what's gonna happen. And then they finally get him to a place where Ellie is able to stab him in the head. And Ellie's like, oh yes, we got him. We got him down. And Riley's like looking down at her arm like we we messed up. Then that's when you start seeing her like it starts bleeding. She starts wiping it away. It continues to bleed. So it's not blood from the infected. It's blood from her. Like she's like, oh, Ellie has like this meltdown of, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. My life is completely over. Like it happened so fast. And then Riley reveals that she's also bit. Um, and then it goes back to what you were saying at the earlier part of the episode of them kind of sitting down and they're kind of taking it in. They're trying to figure out what does this mean for what does this mean in general? What does this mean for us? What's the next step? And I mean, what would you do in that situation if you was to get bit by a zombie or infected? If you're putting yourself in their shoes, I mean, what would be your next step other than eating the gun?
yeah. I mean, this kind of idea that like, okay, we're just gonna kind of ride this out. I was like, yeah, I don't know if I would entertain that, but yeah, I mean, they made the decision like they were just gonna stick it out together, um, and we never really see what happens, but we know what happens, and I thought that that
Right.
was just such a great way for them to play this because while this show is often like very gory and visceral, they never do it just to do it. And the way that they played it here, I thought was really, really smart because it's like if you're paying attention to the show, you know exactly what went down after they kind of faded to black. And
Right.
then they bring us back to the present, and we see Ellie is thinking about all this, and she's like, I already came across one person who was incredibly important to me, and I lost him. And she's like, I'm not going to lose this one. And she
Mm-hmm.
goes and she does whatever she has to do to take care of Joel. Whatever Pedro Pascal got paid for this episode, amazing job on his part because all he had to do was lay there. Uh, and I'll be honest, man, like he's probably wishing he passed out from the blood loss about now because that there's no telling what's on that needle, and Ellie's probably never done this before.
No, and I mean, it looked like he felt every bit of that sewing needle going through, and he's just clenching, and he's just like, just get it over with. Like, if you're gonna do this, just do it. And it's rough, man. You hearing him, you seeing him squirming and everything and they actually showing it going through. It's rough. It's rough to watch. I'm very cringe to stuff like that anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's tough.
I don't think we talked about I think at the very beginning of the episode before they flash back where he's actually telling her to leave him, like to
Yeah,
let him die and stuff. Um, but then showing the flashback, it was genius the way that they put that small part in the beginning because getting to where we at now at the end where she's saving him. Now you understand that after everything that she's been through, there's no way she was gonna leave him behind. Like she was
right.
gonna try to save him, no matter what Joel had to say. She's even, the point where she told him to shut the fuck up. As you felt it. You felt it. You understood why. I mean, look at what she's been through. So
And it even kind of called back to the Bill and Frank scene where Bill gets shot, and he's trying to tell Frank, like I'm done, like call Joel, like I'm not savable, and of course, like Frank doesn't leave his side, and so like just this, is it kind of references back to that, where we see like they have this really deep bond with one another, and there's no way that she's going to leave him, even if it's what may be best for her, like survival. Like
right.
she doesn't want that. Like it's not worth it to her to survive if he's going to die here and she's going to be alone.
Absolutely. And I mean, she had been alone so much after Raleigh passing up until finding Joel. And, this is like the first real person she was able to build a connection with. And they have been building a connection slowly, throughout their journey in these last few episodes. So, yeah, no, you definitely felt that. It was cool to see. And, her, even finding the needle, which was also another cool play in the game where they're scrounging for materials whenever they need it. So I thought that was pretty cool that how she found it in the room where it's like, all right, there's probably a bunch of useless stuff in here, but this is actually something that I do need.
Yeah, I kind of got that idea from the game too. Like that was them like kind of rummaging through stuff trying to find stuff that they needed to survive with, and so I thought that was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, man, well, we'll get into some kind of like what we think is coming up. But before we do that, what are you gonna score this one out of 10?
Um, Last night immediately after watching, I said 10.
Okay.
I think now I probably would say 9.5. If not that it wasn't like I'm taking points off away deliberately. I'm like, was it necessarily a 10 or was it just the fact of how much it pulled? Like I said, I really enjoyed the DLC and the story in that DLC. So for them to portray it in this way, and then not to mention Storm Reed's just such an amazing actress as well. I don't know. I kind of am still on that fence of 9.5 or 10. I'm not 100% sure yet. So I'm gonna just say 9.5 for now, go with the safe answer. But yeah, I mean, it's as close to a 10 as it could be. This in episode 3.
Yeah, I thought so. Like this one didn't pull on me the same way that episode 3 did. So, I'm going to go with a 9.5 also. I don't think it was a perfect episode, but I think for like what they were trying to accomplish, I think they hit every mark they were intending to hit. I do believe though that like, and this is not really against the episode, but it's really more of the show. It's just like they definitely wanted to draw it out another week, right? Like I think that episode 4 and 5, like those could have been one episode. This could have been an 8 episode show, and
Mm-hmm.
then and we could have gotten this episode still. I'm sure there's people out there that are going to call it filler the same way that it happened with episode 3, because they have similar formats. But
Right.
it's definitely in no way filler. They did such a tremendous job with this, and like it tells the story of not only one of our main characters, but her relationship to Joel and the world itself.
And then the other thing is why I would caution against calling it filler for anyone who does think that, because I can see why a lot of people don't really like flashback episodes in general. But this flashback episode, where it differs from 3, is because it's actually Ellie's flashback. So Ellie is a main character that still exists in the world. So you're kind of seeing why she is the way that she is now. Versus with episode 3, these characters aren't here anymore. So it still was amazing in itself. But if somebody was to call it filler, I don't personally feel that way, but I mean, I guess I couldn't necessarily knock them for it. But this is a little bit harder to do because, like I said, Ellie is she's the co-star of the show, and you don't get to see that part of her up until this point. You only see in current day, so it's kind of nice to. And then because I mean, if you think about it, Joel, he got his at the beginning of the episode 1, where they showed how everything was before the world went to crap, and
Right.
his daughter dying in his arms and stuff. So you get that with Joel. So as you getting into the current day, you already see what he's been through. You don't get to see that as much with Ellie, so it was necessary in my opinion.
I agree. There's a lot about Ellie that's not really explained. Like obviously, if without this episode, because like for you and I who have played the game, like we know who she is and what she's about, but like the show's got to be palpable for people who have never played the game at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing a great job of that. And I think that this episode is part of them continuing to do that. It,
Yeah.
it also kind of acted as a good little kind of stopgap between like obviously these last 2 episodes are probably going to be like balls to the wall. It's gonna. I think we're gonna see a lot of action in next week, and then probably a cliffhanger, and then the finale is probably going to be insane.
Well, so I mean, if you want to go ahead and kind of get into predictions next episode, man.
Well, before we do that, let me give the spoiler warning. So, if you have never played any of the games at all, if you don't know what's going to happen, you're just watching the TV show. This is your time to check out. We will see you later on. Come back later on this week and check out that Mandalorian review. I've actually got a couple other things up my sleeve coming out this week. We're putting out a lot of content this week, and then of course we'll be covering episode 8. But if you're still here, then that means you are all cool with game spoilers. What are we thinking about episode 8?
This is a very, very crucial part of the game. I don't know if you watched the preview for the next episode, but there's a part in the game where I can't remember the guy's name, but Ellie, while Joel is still down and kind of down and out for a bit. Obviously, I heard you mention this in the last episode, the last podcast episode, where they differed for how Joel actually got injured in the game, where he actually falls onto the to the what pole or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So he's down for a while. So Ellie has to kind of go explore and trying to get things to help him out. And she winds up amongst these group of people that are crazy. They're you know, and it gets really intense to you know I don't know how much they're going to play into this in the show, but based off everything we've seen, I think they might actually take it there. But in the game, it's kind of implied that that these guys are cannibals, right?
Right. I think we'll see
Um,
that in the show.
I think they are going to play in the show, but then there's another. But the scene that I'm most specifically referring to is when they're in the building and he's chasing Ellie around. You're having in the game, you're having to like try to escape from him and stuff. And he actually like gets a hold of Ellie and he's like pinned her down and stuff. When you're experiencing that in real time in the game, it's almost hard to tell if he's trying to kill her to eat her or if he's trying to assault her a different way.
Right.
And that's kind of what I mean on if they're going to how much of that are they going to lean into in the show, because that's gonna be intense to watch in live action if they go that route.
Game of Thrones never shied away from it, so I don't know that they will here.
Nah,
Um, it I mean, honestly, this show doesn't seem to shy away from really anything. So we'll see how it goes. I do know that Troy Baker is actually playing one of the characters, which is awesome. So, uh,
absolutely.
because he actually voices Joel in the games, and
Hmm.
then he's been like a ton of other video game characters over the years. So yeah, in live action, like him actually being a character in the show, I thought was cool.
Oh, he's gonna freaking kill it, man. And
Yeah.
this is the next episode, so I'm on edge. I'm already on edge before the episode even comes out. It's gonna be one of those ones, man. It's gonna be some action in it, but it's gonna it's gonna be kind of traumatic to experience in live action, as it was in the game, in my opinion. I mean, it was definitely one of the more traumatic scenes and things you have to go through in the game. And again, kind of getting into spoilers, where Ellie becomes a lot more hardened by the time we get to game two. This is one of those defining moments that gets her there. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to do it on screen. And Bella, I just have a feeling she's going to really take us there, and have people sitting on. I mean, you got you have your friend from last week who hasn't played the games, so her watching it. I have my older sister and my younger sister. They both watched the show and they've never played the game. So just seeing their reactions to this happening in real time, it's gonna be interesting, man.
It's going to be something else. I have to say that, like, seeing the people who have not played the games, like, when they see how this plays out, it's not going to be as bad as, like, the next season, which I don't think we're going to get it for 3 years. I,
Yeah, I
I,
agree with you.
I honestly don't think they're going to do another season. I can't see that. I'd say that there's a near 0% chance of it coming out next year. And then I would say the year after that, it's maybe 40-50%. My money is more on them like filming it in 2025 and it releasing in 2026. Like that's more my theory on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that probably revolves around either can they get House of the Dragon out 2 years in a row, or is House of the Dragon going to be every other year forever? And can they put something else in that slot? So I think a lot of that just kind of depends on like the kind of politics at HBO and whether or not like Naughty Dog decides to do a third game. I can only imagine that Sony is probably trying to push them to make a third one at this point.
Especially now. I mean, I've already been seeing some of the advertisement going on for the current games, like, oh, based off the hit show, Last of Us, which the show is based off of the game, so it's funny how they're marketing that. But if you have a lot of people who's watching the show and they haven't played the games, it might be inclined to go back and play it. So it's not a bad marketing ploy.
Right, and
I
they
mean,
just put it out on PC. I mean, and they got the remaster out right now and everything. So
exactly.
it's smart marketing on their part.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think so. Now I will say, for anyone who is still listening that hasn't played the games, and you just brave, maybe you weren't intending on playing the game, so you don't mind listening to this part. I will say, I don't want someone who hasn't played the game and is watching the show and now they want to play the game to see how it translates into the video game to play part two and then be turned off of the show. I really hope that doesn't happen. I mean, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody who would go through that. It definitely would make me feel a way about it. So,
I think that when they get into the second game, I think they make it maybe 2 episodes in, and then I think the viewership drops off by the millions
yeah,
when Joel dies.
I
Uh,
I like what you said in your last episode. You made a mention that before that part comes, that there might be like a season and two in between
I
where
would
they're
love
kind of
that.
free flowing.
I would love that if they did something like that.
I didn't think about it, but it makes sense because there has been a lot of time that passes between one and two. Ellie's a lot older in two. So they definitely have something to do there. Now it would be uncharted territory because this is content that wasn't in the game. So now they're kind of, going like a Game of Thrones route where the book isn't written and you kind of just making up the story a little bit. But I mean, it's not so much the same because you do know what part two is. So there is a way you can kind of bridge the gap in between where, unlike if two wasn't ever out, now you're trying to find a story. You're trying to make up a story as you go along.
And they could do both, right? Like they could do another season of the show, and then if it does well, they could make a game in between one and two, if they wanted to. Like, because I think for a lot of people, two kind of ruins everything. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm one of those people that thinks that. Like I'm very prepared. Like if I wasn't doing this show, right, like I just wouldn't even watch the second season. But I
Mm-hmm.
am, so I'm gonna hate watch it and be mad, and you know, maybe they'll make some changes. They've shown so far that they are willing to make changes to the adaptation. We'll see if like all the backlash from the second game, from there. I know diehard fans of the first game that absolutely just adore it, and they're just like, I want nothing whatsoever to do with the second game. It's not good. So maybe all that backlash will cause them to, like, not even go down some of those routes in the show. But something as big as like them not killing Joel is kind of like, you have to change the whole game then, because like that is kind of the catalyst for the story of the second game.
Right.
So
Right. And it's gonna, I am still one of those people who feel like even though I played through both games, I would be totally fine if they change that part. I know that it won't, it might not go over well at first. Some people are gonna be like, all right, why are y'all, deviating so far from what the game was? But I mean, you got Pedro Pascal, man. Who wants to see him go out like that, man? Like, come on.
yeah, yeah, I definitely, it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. Neil Druckmann is there, and from Naughty Dog, and kind of overseeing this. And he said before, like, oh, we're not going to do anything outside of the games. But I'm like, you already proved that you are willing to do that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, going forward, and kind of like how much money HBO is going to throw at them to maybe make some more, maybe make another season or whatnot, or whether another game is going to be developed. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
I would think that HBO is looking at this as a surprise success because, well, I mean, there have been other, like, especially of more recent times, there have been other good video game adaptations onto big screen, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know if HBO quite thought it was going to be as big as it is. I mean, this is one of their biggest shows on HBO as a network, not even just for the standpoint of it being a video game show, but just in general. I mean, that you have them comparing up to numbers with like House of Dragons and stuff like that. So they're like, all right, this thing is a hit. I don't want it to be two seasons. Like, look, is there any way we can pull something, to make it? And I think some of these flashback episodes is kind of proven to me that might be the route that they go as well. Because if you can do that a little bit more, and then, like you said, not jump so far ahead going into the second season, but maybe like some in between years, and that I mean, they could make this a 3 or 4 season show.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot that they could do with it. We'll have to see where they go. I think HBO, like, it's lightning in a bottle, right? You can't, I don't think that they imagined that it was going to do like House of the Dragon numbers.
Right.
So for them, I mean, to look at that and say, oh, well, I mean, look, we got another cash cow on our hands. Because you got to look at it like from just an entertainment industry standpoint, right? Amazon went out and spent $1 billion on Rings of Power
Mm.
because Jeff Bezos literally said, I want some of that Game of Thrones money. So, I mean, and if you're just now tuning into this show and you want to know why we did not cover Rings of Power, it's because it's really bad. And I don't want to come on here and just shit on something for an hour. We probably will cover the next season because they're going to make 50 episodes whether no one watches it or not. And I've just been, we've been covering too many things that I like. So I may just have to suffer through that. But yeah, I mean, you can tell like the difference in the art, right? Like that show is a commercial product that's put out for no other reason. right? Nobody went, oh, we have this amazing story we'd like to tell. They went, let's go make some money. Somebody dig up, some Tolkien stuff that hasn't been made, and let's figure out something.
Mm,
Whereas this, obviously, like the people who created these games care a lot about this. It is making a lot of money, but it's a passion project for Neil Druckmann, for the people at Naughty
absolutely, man.
Dog. So and HBO, of course, is very happy to have all these people subscribe to them and turn on their channel. So it's
Yeah.
going to be interesting to see how it goes, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it and if they're going to just stick to their guns on the second game or what.
Oh, man. Yeah, yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. I really do hope that they go the route that you said though, with adding, at least a season or two in between.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I want to definitely thank you for joining me again. I'm really glad I was able to get you back on before the end of the season. Always love getting your insights on this stuff, and I know that this, in particular, is something that you're super passionate about, man. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, man. One real quick thing. I am moving back to Georgia in May, so I am.
Okay.
It's gonna be soon that I'm gonna have to come up and do it in person. When
All right. So yeah, you're gonna be sitting at the table with me behind me here, and get that studio experience. And by May, there's no telling what I'm gonna have done in here because we're gonna do some crazy stuff coming up. I've been constantly like improving on this and just kind of expanding it. I got some new lighting, some new cameras, all that stuff coming in. So
nice.
yeah, man, I'm really excited to have you down in person also.
All right, sounds good, man.
Well, that being said, thanks everybody for listening in. This has been an Evolved Review.